So, this week in Vermont, we had just a little bit of snow. Man, telling them my snowblower isn't man enough to kick out the wet snow.
Yep.
So my daughter, I and my wife were out there shoveling all that snow with my huge, long driveway.
Yep.
I'm getting a bigger snowblower. I was at my brother's house and he has this $3,000 snowblower with tracks on it. So he doesn't do anything small. He makes me look normal. So, speaking of normal, two introductory things. If I understood VPR correctly, the Vermont Legislative Senate, whatever, is looking to pass a bill legalizing prostitution. The essence is, if it's consensual, it should not be illegal. Yet, you're paying the woman, like the man. So it's consensual, but you're paying. So they call it sex workers, not prostitution. Why is that relevant? Because I was like, what? Isn't this oppressive of women, though? So actually, opponents, they didn't say who the opponents were, make that point, that this is oppressive of women. So they're going to have to do a little dance to try and get around that problem, because oppression is the big thing lately. But it's also relevant because Lewis is talking about standards, moral standards. The second thing is, due to your fabulous participation and the thoughts that come from you all, talking over Dave, we're looking at this as the next series. I already got most of these. Now, like I said, they're used. So I didn't buy them pristine new. So if you open it up and there's comments underlining, it wasn't me. But, sometimes I like people's comments. I read their dedication, whatever. Cheaper. So, but the thought is, because you guys are doing such a great job of participating and thinking and all that, I think we're going to also get the other book, the sister book, Know Why You Believe. So we're not going to assign 4 chapters a week. So we'll go into that. Unless someone had a different study they wanted to do that I could pretend not to hear, we can entertain that. But moving into Lewis then, and there was just a couple things I wanted to revisit for what Dave brought up. You might say Dave passionately brought up. I really appreciate Dave's enthusiasm when he teaches. Right? We like that. We like a teacher who gets into what they're teaching because, it means something to them. I know some teachers are very, like my economics prof is out there for an hour and a half and talked in a monotone. And I would ask a question just to break him up. But, so, a couple things, because it's really, really important what went over. In chapter 2, book 2, Lewis makes the claim it's a real recognition of the fact that evil is a parasite, not an original thing. And this went like ding, 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 rang bells in my head, because this wasn't just a playful use of language, because Lewis was going back to Aquinas and Augustine, who said that evil is a privation or a perversion of the original state. Lewis calls it a spoiled goodness. So when skeptics accuse God of creating, and that's the key word, creating a bad world full of evil and earthquakes, how do we respond? What would you say to that?
Wasn't in the original design.
Wasn't in the original design. What? But that brings up another point. But anyways, what did I ask you? How would you respond? Any thoughts?
Evil is just a different thought of good.
Different thought? You saying that's what they would say?
Well, it kind of is. I mean, it's just, my view on something could be, it's pretty good, or it's pretty bad. Your view could be the opposite.
Right.
Because there's both in the same.
Right, so we're talking about, let's say the length of a woman's dress within 2 inches above and below the knee used to be the standard. But, we had like family in the karate association, they were very devout, and their daughters wore dresses all the way to the ankle. And our karate uniform is very baggy, so that was okay. They weren't usually allowed to wear pants, but it was okay because it was so bulky. Right? So, we could differ on that too. But what about sexually abusing or torturing babies? Is that something we would go, well, no, is that something they would go, well, it's a matter up to each personal taste? Do you think people would say that?
Yes, there are people in the world today that would say that. Absolutely. Maybe not in his time, or at least it wasn't up front.
Okay.
It wasn't out there, but yeah, I think people would say that. As horrifying as it seems.
Okay. Yes, in Asia they have a place where you can go and drink a mixture of snake blood and alcohol before you go abuse a small baby, with the idea it enhances the experience or deadens conscience. It is kind of, like I said, it's kind of getting hard to find things that everyone can agree is wrong. Usually, though, my experience is torturing babies is, as one atheist said, well, I wouldn't agree with it, but I wouldn't call it wrong. What is that? You want your cake and eat it too.
Well,
anyway.
Just the fact that they're doing drag shows in elementary schools, people think that's okay, some people.
A lot of
That's
people
just
do,
sick.
right?
That's ridiculous.
Sure. It's because we're in the end times, and that which is called good is being called bad, and that which is bad is being called good. And we are living it. We're living it. We got chosen for this time.
Right. So how can we explain how it's possible for God to create humanity good, but humanity go bad? Was God a faulty designer?
No, he gave us free will.
Yes, free will. And now let's move on to the text. I also wanted to note that, they made a big deal out of sabotage. Remember that? He got really excited when he was talking about sabotage. Well, that, to me, the first verse came to my head was when it says, commands us to tear down strongholds. That's not a ad to go join the NRC. That's saying that Scripture tells us to not hide behind the church walls, to go out there and, in fact, engage bad ideas, immoral ideas. So, Book 2, Chapter 3. And I will warn you that I'm not going to get all the way through Chapter 3 and 4 today. That's scary when I already know my plan isn't going to work. So I might steal next week from Dave. Dave doesn't mind. So, in Book 2, Chapter 3, Lewis presents a disjunctive dilemma. Those who've been in my class before, what's a disjunctive dilemma?
How can anything happen contrary to the will of a being with absolute power?
That's really close, Dave. Very good, but that doesn't explain the disjunctive dilemmas. But that's good distraction. Very good. My wife does that too. Disjunctive dilemma is when you get two contradictory options and neither one is good. Right? This is frequently employed by one side of a debate against the other side of the debate. I call it putting them in a pickle. Either answer. It's like, when did you stop beating your wife? Used to be the common illustration of this. Either answer you say gets you in trouble, instead of the third answer, which would be, I don't dare beat my wife because I would die. That's just me personally, speaking hypothetically. So, Dave brought it up. The contradictory problem is, how can evil arise and prosper when God is absolutely sovereign? Lewis used the phrase absolute power. So before we were talking about how could God create an evil world, now we're talking about how can evil exist if God is sovereign? Just a slight difference from one chapter to the other. We've gone over this in other series, but I'm going to open it, I go over it again for two reasons. Really four. One, I just love this topic. But two, it's in the book. Part of this is in the book. Two, skeptics bring this up all the time when I talk to them. The question of evil and suffering is right at the top of their objections to Christianity and religion. And three, I personally wrestled with this for many years as a Christian. So I'm going to redefine what we call the problem of evil. Then I'm going to talk about one person who's probably even smarter than Lewis. And then we're going to come back to Lewis. I'm going to read you a rather long, please hang with me, really old guy said about this and then put it in plain English for you. Epicurus, back in 300s BC, was an ancient philosopher who summed up what modern philosophers call the logical problem of evil. There's two philosophic logical problem of evil and the evidential problem of evil. And I know you're going to go home and Google that before lunch because you're that excited. Okay. But weirdos like me get all excited about this because I wrestled with this. I really wrestled with this about evil and suffering. And Epicurus, he didn't call it the logical problem, but the modern guys call it that. And for a long time, these guys thought this logical problem of evil was a knockdown, punch-out destruction of theism and Christianity. They thought, that's it, your Christianity is dead. We brought up a problem you can't solve. Ha ha! If you have any experience on the internet, we get these guys all the time, we call them pundits, and they come up with these claims, and they're like real smug and arrogant, like, ha! Destroy Christianity in 3 minutes. You know, so if I go 4 minutes, I'm okay. But anyways, they get real. But here's what Epicurus said. Now listen to the disjunctive dilemma. Listen how either option, any option here, makes God look bad. God either wishes to take away evils and is unable, or he is able and is unwilling, or he is neither willing nor able, or he is both willing and able. So you got 4 things here, and they're all bad. If he is willing and unable, he is feeble, which is not in accordance with the character of God. If he is able and unwilling, he is envious, which is equally at variance with God. If he is neither willing nor able, he is both envious and feeble and therefore not God. If he is both willing and able, which alone is suitable to God, from what source then are evils? Why does he not remove them? So Empiricus wasn't thinking about Christianity God, he was thinking about Zeus. Because back in that time, Aristotle and Plato revered Zeus. It's not the Zeus we think of. They describe the gods as being perfect in everything. Whereas, the popular level was Zeus is a dirtbag, So in other words, what he's saying is, how can God be powerful and good and evil exist? Since evil obviously exists, duh, either God is not good or he doesn't exist. Dave Matthews, remember the Dave Matthews Band, said, if there is a God, a caring God, then we have to figure he's done an extraordinary job of making a real cruel world. You can see how we're stuck at this point. You'd be stuck in this dilemma.
No.
Not yet, Jackie. Not yet.
I'm sorry.
I love how you're thinking. I just love that. Okay. They were so confident that our goose is cooked, that theism here, that Christianity is a thing off of theism. Islam is theistic. But they were so confident that our goose is cooked, they were smug. Sorry, we get a little emotional. I'll tell you why I'm emotional. Because I wrestled with this. 16 years of severe doubt as a Christian, not before, as a doubt. Doubting God's existence, doubting God's presence, doubting the goodness of God. And I wrestled with these things. Because on my own, I couldn't figure it out. And then God, in his timing, thanks for waiting 10 years, God. God in his timing brought answers from guys like this guy, Alvin Plantinga. Probably even smarter than Lewis. I mentioned him before. Consider Alvin Plantinga. Some consider him, this philosopher, this Reformed philosopher, one of the most brilliant Christian thinkers of all time. In his earth-shaking book, God, Freedom, Evil, Plantinga gives what he calls the free will defense. This basically says that God might have a possibly good reason for allowing evil. He didn't say what it is, because usually they're like, tell me, child shot in the street, and they make it real graphic and gory, and it is graphic and gory, but they're like, or the other ones will say, a deer dying in the woods, burning up. How could that possibly be something good? They bring these up, and it's supposed to just devastate you, and you go, oh, you're right, there's no good reason. Well, Plantinga doesn't say, I have a good reason. He says, God could have a good reason that you and I don't know. We may never know. And when Plantinga came out from this, it single-handedly destroyed the logical problem of evil. In fact, skeptics no longer trot this one out. They shifted to call the evidential, which we're not going into. But this was so significant. God might have a good reason for allowing your child to die of cancer. Might have a good reason for allowing your spouse to die of cancer. This is why God sometimes heals and sometimes doesn't heal. This is why God sometimes allows great violence and tragedy, or allows a government to keep going. If you read Russia, what happened to Russia when the Bolshevik Revolution, it is staggering the atrocity. Lenin promised there'd be no massacres, and he massacred people. So when certain political factions or most college professors talk about how great communism is, well, here's an example of it not being this utopia they describe. Anyways, so let's get back to Lewis. What was the gist of Lewis's mother and schoolroom illustration? What was he saying there? The mother and schoolroom.
He was saying that the mother was allowing her children to, even though they knew what she wanted, they wanted the schoolroom clean, but she allowed them. She said, I'm not going to like micromanage you. You are going to have to learn to do it yourself. And so she wanted them to learn how to do it and to do it themselves. It's discipline for their own.
So it's purely a learning exercise, right? This is a trick question.
Learning and growth. That's how they grow. They can't expand on something if they don't experience it.
Right. Unlike certain people who adopt a 9 and 10-year-old and think they'll just explain the rules and they'll want to do it, children usually don't do what you tell them.
That is true.
That is true. And you can use, call it the mom card. In my house, mom was Thor's hammer. Who cares about dad? If mom's upset, everyone's upset. But some children don't care how much you punish them. Ever have one of those? Stand. Look. Hi. Not right now. Thank you. Some children don't.
Is that one of the ones that doesn't?
No.
Timing.
Some children, you could stand them in a corner for hours, call the abuse society. Didn't know what else to do. This child was so defiant, strong-willed. It took hours before this child's spirit would break, and sometimes not even then. Don't judge me, but we were told, don't beat them, because they were beaten in foster care. Not that I would beat them.
Spank.
Spank, yes, that's the correct word. I'm going to be this perfect parent. I'm never going to lose my temper with my children. Oh, I'm going to explain things, blah, blah, blah. And then I'm like furious. I had to walk away because I was so angry. How dare this child define me? Anyways, yes, there we go. But what is the one thing that Lewis, we already said it, Lewis says is necessary for this whole thought process, and while he didn't say it, it's necessary in order to not have God responsible for evil. We already said it.
Free will.
Thank you, Joe. Free will. Free will. God created humanity good, not morally good, but he creates something, he says, it is good. I mean, it's a statement of its essence, its character. When my wife makes a cake, she made a birthday cake for me yesterday, and it was good. It tasted good. It looked good. It was sugar-free. It was all those things. I couldn't find it this morning to steal a piece on my way to work, but that's okay. God created humanity good, but also gave humanity free will. That, as Lewis says, a thing is free to be good and free to be bad. Yikes! Why would God give us free will? What does Scripture say the reason that God gave us free will is? Question.
Because he's not going to force us to worship him.
Is that what Scripture says?
Well, maybe not so many words.
What?
It doesn't actually say.
It doesn't actually actually tell us why he gave us free will. What does Lewis say the reason he gave us free will? You can actually read the chapters. Yes. Lewis says what?
He surmises that God didn't want an automaton
Okay.
people, that he wanted a people that would choose to love him. And
Because God needs our love, like the movie The Titans, right? Because if Liam Nelson didn't get the prayers, he would perish. So that's God. God needs our... What are we shaking head for, Joe?
We know better than that.
Right? God is perfect. God is not succinct. See, acidic, not acidic, aseity. God is complete in himself. He didn't create us so that he could get our love, though he receives our love. He created us so we could love him. Now, I believe, I was told by my professor that Aquinas teaches that God does not have a relationship with us, but only us with him, because if God had a relationship with us, that a relationship changes you, and since God cannot change in absolutely any way, he doesn't have a relationship with us. That's actually a category mistake, but we're not getting into it. Lewis says, only thing makes possible, free will, is the only thing makes possible any love or goodness or joy. Free will. So the idea, what were you going to say now, Jeff?
Well, he wasn't going to force us to worship him, and he wanted us to do it because we love him.
Right.
We wouldn't really love him if he was making us do it, right?
Well,
Some might.
he could. He could create us where we would love him without the ability not to love God. Yes. Would that be love, though? Controlling. Like sometimes guys who date girls. Now this is actually once where it was not me. Guys who date girls and they're hyper controlling of the woman. Like won't let them go out and talk to anybody else and all that because they're trying to control them.
It works both ways. Women do that too. Believe it or not, it's true.
you have nothing to say to that, Kevin? Nothing? Yeah.
Danger, Will Robinson. I did this to my cousin, and he's like, what? Danger, danger. Anyways, if you don't know what that is, Lost in Space, the original one. Google it. Anyway,
Robbie the robot.
did God foreknow that, did God know, and I'm meaning foreknow, that humanity would go wrong morally when he granted us free will? Did he know that?
Of course he did.
Yes, he did.
Of course he did.
He knows everything. He's omniscient. That's why it's so hard to say.
Yeah. This comes out of the Latin. Yeah, he knew that. He didn't go, oh! What am I going to do now? It's, like, man, crucified Jesus. What am I going to do now? They destroyed my plan. No, that wasn't the plan. Anyway, as humans see the we humans see the travesty and agony of sin, the devastation of sin. Do you think free will was worth it?
Yes.
You do. With all what it's wrought in the world,
Yes.
Jackie, you think free will is worth it?
Yes.
What about the rest of you?
But you have to look at the other spectrum because there's a lot of good out there as well. So
Yeah.
many people focus on the
If
bad.
we're supposed to be
It
living
makes
with
the
God,
good worth more.
yeah, and if we're gonna eventually live with God, that the ultimate goal is eternity, and to be living with God, I would want to know how to live in His world. And if we don't learn it here, where else are we gonna learn it? And how else are we gonna learn it if we don't experience it? So he's gonna let us, just like we're gonna let our kids sometimes. Hey, okay, if that's what you wanna do. I can tell you it's gonna be A or B. Well, guess what? Well, sorry, you chose. I can't take all the responsibility for you. I'll walk with you with the consequences, but hey, that doesn't mean I can take them away. What's done is done.
You're a really mean mother.
I am mean, I guess, I'm mean, but they don't ask my opinion often.
Teacher,
Yes.
I mean, why when tragedy hits, the world turns to Christians?
That's true.
Sometimes they do.
When we have like major, in the US,
Right.
major tragedies,
What do you think that answer
everybody
is?
runs to the churches, runs to the Christians.
What do you think that answer is?
Because they were created to worship God, and they don't know it.
Right?
They deny it, they reject it until something beyond them that they can't handle, even though they think they can handle everything. But inside, they do know, and that's from the beginning, they do know. And even though they want to deny it, they want to say this or that, but ultimately, when something major happens, that's why they run, because that knowledge is in them.
The football field after
You're
Warren
born.
Hamlin had cardiac arrest. The
Yeah.
taking a knee went back to its original meaning.
Yes. Yes. However, that's just because of the influence of the black religious
sure, yeah.
past. We know that they sometimes bring that in. I didn't hear that, but I was imagining that would be the scoffing it away. You know, well, the guy laying on the field, I'm sure he wouldn't go, oh yeah, we'll do it anyways. It's nothing, it's meaningless, but it's historic. No, he'd be like, yes, pray, you know, right?
And intellectualizing things that we don't understand. And it's beyond our, God doesn't, we're not in the same place. Any more than our
Something.
2-year-old is on the same place as where we are when they are having ultimate book of matches.
On something. Okay, why didn't God do it another way? Here's a couple. God could have created us with free will. Wait a minute. No free will, so we would be automatons and we would do what is right. He could do that. It's possible God could have created humanity and everyone would just do what is right without any possibility of doing what is wrong because he wouldn't give us free will. That's a possibility. Why didn't he do it that way? Secondly, God could have created, this is what someone would say, God could have created us free will, but only with a free will that does what's right. After all, God could do anything. So he can give you free will, but make it so that you would only choose right.
Still means you don't have free will.
Huh?
Still means you don't have free will.
Yes, you're right. The second one is called irrational. It's not possible. God can do anything. No, he can't do absolutely anything. Bible says he cannot do what? Can't lie. He can't act contrary to his nature. So, the response to both of these is the same. If God did not give you free will, you would not be you. You would be something different. And here's the even more. If God did not give you free will, your loved ones, your children, would not be who they are. They would be someone else. Someone says, if you demand of God that he makes everyone do what is right, watch out, because he might start with you. And I talked about how, so God cannot give you free will and then make it so you only choose one way. God cannot do that. It's impossible. It's like saying, I'm going to make an on-off switch that only switches off, but I'm still going to call it an on-off switch. It's not possible. There are some things, like God making a married bachelor square circle. God can't do that. And that's actually a good thing. Lewis said, now God designed a human machine to run on himself, meaning God himself. He also said, God cannot give us happiness and peace. I think this is page 50. God cannot give us happiness and peace apart from himself because it's not there. Let me say this again. Lewis said, God cannot give us happiness and peace apart from himself because it's not there. Wait a minute. Are there non-Christians who are happy and joyous and laughing and giggling? Didn't Lewis make a mistake here?
No.
Why?
Because that doesn't mean that it's all coming from God. You know, it's a person's perception. If they take joy in evil or take joy in other mischievous acts that aren't part of God, he can't create that.
Okay, I didn't see where you're going, but now I see you're going with that. There's a trail, and we're not going down that. What about rescue? What happens when non-Christians, because Lewis said, can't happen apart from himself, but when non-Christians are happy and giggling and joyous like over family, that's
It
not...
doesn't last. It doesn't last.
It's not.
There's always something else. It doesn't,
Based on their circumstances.
you're always still chasing the next thing. If you don't have God, you're going to keep on chasing.
Okay, now we're getting to it, Jeff.
It's like the fake news, it's not real.
Well, it is real, but it's a question of origins.
And
Where does joy, laughter, happiness ultimately come from?
Holy Spirit.
Or image of God. We were made in the image.
Right. So when non-Christians are happy and joyous, this doesn't make Lewis wrong. It's saying
It's
that
all
is
coming from God.
ultimately, and you were created to be happy, to be joyous, especially with children. You're not supposed to go, oh, they're a teenager now. Oh, wait, that's not a good example. So,
No.
but you're supposed to be happy and joyous in things. You don't have to be a Christian to be happy and joyous, but in order to attribute its basis, it has to be theistic. Because under Darwinian evolutionary theory, what is happiness in Darwinian evolutionary theory?
Being alive.
More than that. Ultimately, it's based in survival of the fittest. But here's the thing. It's not you. It's you, but not you. It's your brain fizzing. So when I kill competition to my genetic line, and then I'm joyous that my cubs, my lion cubs, are living and prosperous, it's only because it's in the brain. It's not your choice. You think it's your choice, dear created evolutionary human, but you're just following your chemical programming. I said before in another series, when these Darwin evolutionists are honest, they will tell you you have no free will. And everyone's up to that point clapping until they say that, and they, what? You have no free will. This is all predetermined chemically. Instinct. Anyway, so we're saying that no, it comes from God beyond instinct, and it's a higher thing. Love isn't just an evolutionary trick of the mind to get you to procreate. Love is something higher, more noble, given by the divine, so you can be like him. But this week we watched the thing on dogs, because I like dogs. My wife likes any animal, except termites, and ticks. She loves ticks. But dogs are said to have a gene that we have in our brain that essentially affection. Wolves don't have this. That's why a wolf doesn't become your buddy. It eats you. Wolves don't look to human in experiments to solve problems. They do it themselves. But love, still love, joy, all that. So I think I beat that one to death. Frank Turek's book, Stealing from God, he says all these things, including morality, that the skeptics get on their horses and demand that we recognize, see, I'm not religious and I'm good. And says, I'm not disputing that. What I'm disputing is, where is your basis for that? Under Darwinian evolution, you have no basis to be compassionate. None. Yes, we do, because we do. That's called circular reasoning.
Okay, question. Now, is compassion something that God instills in an animal or a creature, meaning a person or a dog, as time, is that by association in time, and that Darwin's evolution or whatever, within time? Because why would a dog and a wolf, like one has that gene and one doesn't? Or
Right.
you could say that about a cat, or a
No,
mountain lion.
I can't say that.
Or you might say that about some birds. I mean, there are birds
Right.
that choose to stay around with the human and companion and that, or not others. And you can't say that's not feelings or emotions, or can you?
Right. Well, who remembers from the other series, do Christians absolutely reject evolution?
No.
No, there's Christians out there to support evolution.
No.
Theo-
That's, we're not
Theo-
talking,
You're not
take
talking
that off.
theo-evolution.
There are Christians,
Macro.
biologos believes in theistic Darwinian evolution. And we had them at a conference, and they got into it with the top guy, William Lane Craig, and some of these other big, Moreland. Moreland is not a huggy guy. He's like, enough of that! 300 people in the room, like, whoa!
He's a nice guy.
Anyways, we're not talking theistic Darwinian evolution. We're talking, can Christianity accept evolution?
Not macroevolution.
Not macroevolution, microevolution.
What's the difference?
What's the difference? Who remembers what the difference is?
Macroevolution says that we came out of a swamp and we crawled out, and we used to be something different and a totally different animal, and now we're humans. Whereas microevolution, you'll see changes in people, like people who live in climates where there's a lot of sun and their skin tends to darken. I mean, that's just one, and I'm not sure. You see it all the time. But it's not one thing turning into a totally different thing, because ultimately God says He created us in His own image. He doesn't say that about animals. So we know that we were never animals. We were always created
But
different.
then there's that thought, what is the image? Is the image from the eye, or is the image of the soul? Is it a physical body, or is it the soul that's with the image of?
Rabbit trail. And I actually, in my dissertation, made it from this to that much and put it in a footnote. It says, if you want to look this up, go ahead. But it's vague. There is no biblical explanation of what the image is. All the different theology things, what you basically come up with is resemblance and uniqueness. Resemblance and uniqueness. We don't really know what it is. But you're right, it didn't, the animals. Are we mammals? Yes.
Yeah, right.
Technically, yes.
Are we animals? Not in the sense that they would say the word animal, right? It's a matter of terms. But what's the important thing is that it's called species. The Genesis says something about life. I'm sorry, I can't remember the correct term Genesis uses. A cow species is not going to become
Camel.
a monkey.
Yeah.
Right? A fish is not going to become a giraffe. Right? There's limit. Look, who is responsible for microevolution in dogs?
Humans.
Humans. But notice there is limits of the microevolution of the species. You get too small, you get a lot of problems. You get too big, Great Dane, you get a lot of problems. And you can't go past certain limits because macro-Darwinian evolution says we create new DNA information, and this is how we went from down here on the tree to way up here. No. Science, not a bunch of whack job preachers in a pulpit. Not you, Pastor Bill. It's science says we don't create new DNA information. We have what we have and we turn it on and off. Darwin's finch beaks in the Galapagos, they would turn on and off. The beaks would get longer with food or no food, and they would get shorter when there's lots of food. It's not that they created new beak DNA. Anyways, we're going off in this rabbit trail. Sorry. Ah! I ran out of time. Overtime. We'll pick up next week with the liar, lunatic thing that Lewis has made famous. Any last comments of what we've gone over so far? Any last questions? Yeah.
I'm surprised sometimes by people. I know we have to understand. We know it's important. I used to say to my kids, we'd open the door onto the deck, and sometimes a little ant would run in. And that ant, and of course we have a whole house, and we're coming in and out of the house and in and out of that room. And I explained to them that, we have the Bible and we can learn about God, but in a lot of ways, we are that ant, and we've stepped into that room. And we can know about God, but how could any of us, even the smartest people, assume, and that's the thing I feel like it shows how little we really know about God. How could we assume that we could look at what we see in our life and we could know why God would do a lot of these things? Because God is so much higher than us.
Right.
So when I'm not saying we shouldn't search or we shouldn't try to know, but think about how much stuff do you not know about God right now, in spite of thinking and reading His Word and living a certain amount of years. We don't. So I guess it's always amazing to me that some people, if they can't understand everything about God, then God's out. And yet they live in a world where they don't understand everything all the time. But those are out.
What?
So, I know, it just seems crazy. People.
Yeah. But what is one way we know an immensity about God and why He does things?
Read the Bible's word.
His revelation.
Right.
So there's natural revelation. God made atoms. If I run my head into this, it's going to hurt. So I don't need the Bible to tell me that this is hard, right? So God made a world where certain things are...
Yeah, you just
said there too many times.
But other things,
Spiritual revelation.
like the resurrection, why the resurrection? These things cannot be known by natural revelation. They must be known by, not general, specific revelation or supernatural revelation. This is why we hold to the Bible, because it's God telling us about Himself. This is why I did this. Don't do this. Do this.
So what is it? Are we spiritual beings living in a physical dimension, or are we physical? Are we the other way around?
You gave me a disjunctive dilemma. And as we learned, I'm going to go the third route between the horns, it's called, and not take either one. We're both.
Yes.
Someone once said in the Bible study, this is not who we are, it's just a shell. I said, that's Klingon. I said, no, I disagree with you. And it got real quiet. This is made by God. This is good. This is good. It's corrupted,
By way to put in it.
but it's good. The body is to be revered. We don't desecrate the body. How you define that, I don't know.
Why would we eat the blood? Why would we drink the blood of Christ and eat the body of Christ if that flesh was bad or the representative of it?
That's one way to think about it. And we're not going to go into that right now because I have to do catching everything. Hey, so next week we're going to pick up with the liar, lunatic part,
I know what you
unless Spirit Airlines messes with my schedule like they tried. Father, the more we learn from smart guys and smart girls, the more we're just amazed at the brilliance of what you have made, how you made us. We could have been made these little biological robots, Lord, but you didn't do that. You gave us love and beauty. Oh, these things don't come from dirt.